Staritsa. You welcome us nicely. So the Staritsa became first of all to see the beautiful monastery and the scenery of the view called Staritsa, but also maybe some solid stuff. A monastery. That's the Assumption Monastery. Originally it was founded back in the 12th century. Chicken! Rooster! And how many roosters do you have? Huh? 0. Main churches are from 16th to 19th century. The whole city was probably founded in the beginning of the 12th century. It was devastated by Tatars, and then during World War II also it was occupied by Nazi Germany soldiers, but the city was released back in 1942. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, almost all of the industries that were located in the city got abandoned, so now it doesn't feel that well economically. The city has 2 parts, as they call it, Moscow side, on which we are now, and Leningradsky, so St. Petersburg side. This man is fishing on Volga, the longest river in Europe. The monastery is a men's monastery, and in the past 10 years it was restored quite a lot. There were big funds given to the city for that. And here, by the way, you can see that churches have black domes, which signifies that it's a monastery. Inside of the monastery we will first go into that beautiful white church from the 16th century, which is pretty simple inside, but still. As you can see, the ceilings are pretty low, so in Russian churches it was usually like that. Churches were much smaller than, for example, Gothic cathedrals, and that's because Russian masters for a long time didn't know how to build anything high or very spacious. Also, it's easier to warm up in winter smaller volumes. Among other things here, you can see original brickwork. Just so peaceful and quiet here. Unbelievable. In the monasteries they also have a little cemetery. They have their one of the important generals buried. They also have the relics of one of the saints. I think it's the most beautiful part.
Yeah, it's true, and it's interesting because in some of the tombs you have the triangle in the middle, and this triangle, it's like the symbol of Mason.
This one is in legs. I like how those grey stones covered in yellow and grey moss are combined with the green grass of spring. That's why you should come to Staritsa. I think it's the most picturesque view of Russia that we have ever seen. We expected something like that in Tarusa, but unfortunately there it was much less romantic. But here, that's the real Russia.
Now we want to join the monastery.
Do we?
A little bit.
Bye bye, chickens. Now we are going to cross the river to go to the other side, where except for beautiful untouched by restoration churches, they were producing, as they call it, Staritsa marble. Sabrina, your opinion about one is driving on messed up roads?
It was very risky. I think he's a risky guy.
Okay.
But it's funny. It's so funny.
The unrestored look of the churches on the Leningrad side of Staritsa gives a very romantic vibe. fact that they have a fresco outside survived this church being in such a condition is actually very unique. All of those who died for motherland. Here were actually very big fights during World War II, so probably because of that.
So that's the common grave where the soldiers were buried who were fighting here, and sometimes it's the unknown soldiers, so their identities were not discovered. Sometimes they know the surnames, but they had no time to bury them properly, so they just were actually placing the bodies together and burying them in the same place.
And especially have a lot here in this area nearby the city called Rzew, because in Rzew were very tough fights during the war, especially between 1941 and 1943. Actually, it was just one giant battle that lasted for more than 2 years, and all over this area, when you drive on the highway, you will see signs saying like, as we call it, brother grave here, brother grave there, brother grave another place. Yeah. Do you feel Russian here, Kate?
I feel really Russian, and I feel so cold.
And do you feel like that looks like Hagia Sophia?
Yeah, it does. Actually, I love the architecture of this region.
Ivan, I'm coming to you. You look epic.
That's a beautiful view.
I don't like climbing the mountains, flying, or anything connected to the heights.
Like that mountain?
Yes.
Right on time.